something very historic, very special coming along now. Piloted by Andrew Davis, nicknamed Mum, chief pilot, a volunteer pilot. Andrew is flying for us today the Fairey Swordfish. Now this is an aircraft that dates back many, many, many years. And I'd like to mention somebody who was involved with the Fairey Swordfish. His name was Squadron Leader Lionel Welsh. He flew from HMS Victorious as part of the flight that spotted the Bismarck, which we're going to talk about. One of the main roles the Swordfish had, that history of spotting the Bismarck and attacking it. He never talked about his role in the Swordfish, but after my mother died, says Heather, I found his war record and loads of photos. So let's mention Heather, who lives and works in Clacton, and her dad, the late Squadron Leader Lionel Welsh, who was one of the pilots of this, the Fairey Swordfish, as it comes directly into us, banking up and dipping down the right wing, so we see the beautiful underbelly of this very old biplane. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about it and its illustrious past over many, many decades.
W5856 is the oldest surviving airworthy Fairey Swordfish in the world. She first flew on Trafalgar Day on the 21st of October 1941 and was a Blackfish, built by Blackburn Aircraft at Sherburn in Elmet and delivered to 82 Squadron on the 20th of October 1941 for overseas transport to Gibraltar. She served with the Royal Navy's Mediterranean Fleet for a year. Little is known about her service in the Mediterranean, but it's likely she was based on the North Front in Gibraltar, carrying out patrols over the Straits. She was then returned to Fairey Stockport factory for refurbishment during the winter of 1942 to 43.
The wonderful sound of that Bristol Pegasus engine we're getting from our microphones on BBC Essex. Passing this time, again showing us the underbelly from right to left. Very distinctive markings, which we will tell you about as well. And hi to Jonathan Hearn, who came all the way from Australia last year to see this plane. He came to see us at the Clacton Airshow. He's listening at home, down under. His father flew in these amazing aircraft.
It was such a privilege, Ian, wasn't it, to look at his father's logbook and see the training flights and the missions that he took part in. Now, this aircraft was used for advanced flying training. She was transferred to the Royal Canadian Navy in 1944, again for more training roles until the end of the war. She was disposed of and passed through several hands on civilian operators, one being a farmer who thought that her plans were to turn her into a crop sprayer, but she was quickly purchased by Sir William Roberts, who brought her over to Scotland to join his Strathallan collection, and then she arrived in crates in August 1977, but in a badly corroded condition. Then in 1990, the aircraft was bought by British Aerospace and completely restored to flying condition. Her first successful test flight was in May 1993, when she was gifted to the Royal Navy Historic Flight, and 3 years later was adopted by the City of Leeds in tribute to the local companies that built the Swordfish components during World War II. She now wears the city's coat of arms and the name on her port side just forward of the pilot's cockpit. In 2003, she was grounded due to corrosion on her wing spars, and her future really looked uncertain. But with the great generosity of BAE Systems, they stepped in and constructed a brand new set of wings, which were delivered in 2012. She was then finally restored to full flying condition and saved for the nation by a huge grant from the Peter Harrison Heritage Foundation. The aircraft rejoined the display circuit 10 years ago in 2015, and she carries a new paint scheme which depicts the Swordfish of 820 Naval Air Squadron during the attack of the Bismarck in 1941.
Yes, the paint job really is quite striking. It's a real black and white stripe across each top and bottom wing, and also at the tail. From May 2024, this Fairey Swordfish got that freshly painted D-Day invasion stripes colour. And we talked about the role that the Swordfish played, a crucial role in protecting convoys from U-boats attacks in the Battle of the Atlantic. Also sinking the Italian fleet at Taranto, and of course crippling the mighty Bismarck. But Taranto is a battle that really stands out from the 11th and 12th of November in 1940. It was a battle between British naval forces under Admiral Andrew Cunningham and Italian naval forces. The Royal Navy launched the first all-aircraft ship-to-ship naval attack in history, employing 21 of these Fairey Swordfish biplanes, the torpedo bombers, from the aircraft carrier HMS Illustrious in the Mediterranean Sea. The attack struck the battle fleet of the Regia Marina at anchor in the harbour of Taranto, using aerial torpedoes despite the shallowness of the water. And according to Admiral Cunningham, Taranto and the night of the 11th to the 12th of November 1940 should be remembered forever as having shown once and for all that in the fleet air arm, the Navy has its most devastating weapon.
The Swordfish has a stately 90 knots cruise when lightly laden and 82 knots when there's a tweet torpedo underslung. It has a very reliable engine. Now, the crew on board those missions were really not afforded too much comfort. There was no heater on board, it's open cockpit, and all you've got is fabric covering on the seats. They had really no shelter from the cold in the winter. It would have been particularly cold on those Arctic missions. A little wing waggle on the front there. We can see just how highly manoeuvrable the Blackfish is. Despite her lack of speed, there was very few criticisms of the aircraft other than could she perhaps go a little bit faster, but ultimately reliable. And sometimes that slow speed was actually to her advantage, as the enemy guns often found it difficult to offset their sighting on such a slow target.
What a beautiful little wing waggle as the Fairey Swordfish and Andrew Davis, mum to his friends, made its pass from left to right, just dipping one wing, then the other, one wing, then the other, in a very graceful manoeuvre. If you're in that barge over there, that Thames sailing barge, you'd have had a fantastic view from the other side to what we get. Absolutely beautiful. And we're so pleased and proud to have had the Swordfish here for us today. Clacton, shall we thank the team from the Fairey Swordfish?
And thank you to Navy Wings, part of the Fly Navy Heritage Trust.